Hello viewers, welcome to class. Today we are looking at some GCE government past questions. Please come along with me. The first question we are looking at is this. Constitutionalism emphasizes that those who govern the state should do so according to what is constitutionalism? Constitutionalism means obedience to the spirit and the letter of the Constitution. Constitutionalism means doing what the Constitution says. Constitutionalism means limiting the power of the government. That those that owns this government, that manage the government, should do that based on laid down rules and regulations provided by the Constitution. That is what constitutionalism is. So let's look at the options. A, lay down rules of public order, the dictate of the political leader, the direction of legal luminaries, the satisfaction of their egos, their whims and caprices. These are all funny options, you know. So the correct answer here is option A. Do according to the laid down rules of public order, which means live according to the provisions of the Constitution. All right? The next question. Which is not a type of citizenship? Confinement, indigenous, marriage, nationalization, restoration. The only odd one out here is indigenous. All these other types, they are type of citizenship. You can be conferred upon, can be by marriage, by nationalization, or by registration. So the option here is indigenous, option B. The next question. Direct democracy succeeded in Athens because, that was original democracy. It was practiced by the Athenians, where they all gathered together in one place to make decisions concerning their society. All right? But we could not do that again now because of the explosion in population, because of globalization and civilization. So what we do now is what we call indirect democracy. That is representative democracy. Okay? So let's come to the question. Direct democracy succeeded in Athens because the civil servants were properly trained, the institution of government was well established, the population was small in size, the people were united and purposeful, it made use of professionals. Of course, for my explanation, the correct answer is the population was small in size. Option C. You see the next question. An instrument for exercise of power for controlling, administering, and managing the affairs of the people based on given laws is the civil service, executive, government, judiciary, states. You agree with me? This is definition of what? Government. Because government is an institution of the state. Government is an instrument of the state by which the states, will be able to work to control, to administer, and manage, okay, all the affairs of the people. Well, the next question. How many delegates from Nigeria and Cameroon attended the London Constitutional Conference of 1953? I remember that conference in London, when the NCBWA, National Congress for Nigeria, for British West Africa, and the one of London, one went for the conference to discuss the future of Nigeria, because at this conference, the Antonio Naro made what? The proposal that Nigeria should be independent by 1956. That was independent motion was moved at this conference in London. So the correct answer here, there are 19 of them went for that particular conference. Option C. Okay, let's see the next one. Primus inter pares is a term usually used to qualify the electorate, president, prime minister, queen of England, senate president. The answer here is what? Prime minister. The word prime, that's what primus, prime. The prime minister is also one of the ministers, but is the chief of other ministers, is the head of other ministers. So that's what we call him primus inter pares. I think it's whether Greek or whatsoever, or Italian, whatever it is, language. All right? Option C is the correct answer. The 1993 general election had been judged as the best in Nigeria, yet it was inconclusive because I was a witness to this election. In fact, I voted at this election when we had M.K. Abiola and Bashir Tofa to contest NRC and SDP. And I knew because I saw on TV the then result of the election was released. We had 30 states as at that time. 15 of those results were released, and the results that were released by the Electoral Commission that time, INEC, was having Abiola was already leading with 11, including northern states, and these western states were not there at all. Okay, so people already assumed that Abiola is the winner of the election. Okay, so but what happened? Suddenly, the election was annulled by the then Ibrahim Babangida military regime, and no substantial reason was given to us for annulment of the election, and that led to crisis. I remember what happened then where I was staying in Lagos, the crisis of Abiola race. You know, people running scatter and what have you, because of the annulment of this particular election. And meanwhile, this election was judged by the international community as the freest and the fairest election in the history of Nigeria, the best ever we have done. But yet, the military junta of Babangida cancelled the election. Okay, it was widely rigged. It produced no winner. One of the candidates resigned on the day of election. The election result was annulled. The result was inconclusive when it was announced. The answer is what? The election result was annulled. Annulment of the election result. Annulment of the election results. Okay? Though they started the announcement before it was stopped along the line. So the result was inconclusive when it was announced. It could also be correct. All right? It could also be correct because on the part of the government, they will say it's inconclusive because they only have result of about only 15 states out of 30 states released. Okay? But the main crux of the matter that led to crisis in 1993 was the annulment of the old result. Because if you are saying inconclusive of the result, the one you announced, who won? We could have made use of the 15 that was announced. But since your election result was annulled, whether inconclusive, whether announced or not announced, whether in part or in whole, the result was annulled. So that's the crux of the matter. The election result was annulled. Thereby, there was no election. The implication is that there was no election. Okay? And that was the third republic. That was also be a third republic. So third republic too was also what? Annulled. And that brought us to where we are today in the fourth republic. Okay? The next question. Nigeria started to operate on a real federal structure within the introduction of the 1922 Clifford Constitution, 1946 Richard Constitution, 1953 London Conference, 1954 Leyton Constitution, 1963 Republican Constitution. We need to know the basis of each of these constitutions for us to get the correct answer to this question. Now, 1922 Clifford Constitution started what they call elective principle. That was the first election in the history of Nigeria in 1923. So it has to do with the first election in Nigeria. Though that election was not a general election in the first place. Okay? Because it was limited to only Lagos and Calabar, ratio 3:1. Okay? Richard Constitution 1946 basically was one that regionalized Nigeria to north, west, and east. Okay? 1953 London Conference was a question we answered earlier. It has to do with the platform where agreement was made that Nigeria, it was suggested that Nigeria should practice federal system of government. It was at this conference it was discussed. It was at this conference, like I mentioned earlier, that Antonio Naro proposed independence motion, and Nigeria should get independent by 1956, in 3 years after the conference in London. It was this conference also, when they came back at their return, that led to what the first major riot in Nigeria, Kano riot of 1953. All right? Now, Leyton Constitution. Leyton Constitution was the outcome of the 53 conference in London and 54 conference in Lagos. Why? The London conference of 53 was inconclusive. The chairman there was Oliver Leyton, okay, was one that chairman the meeting in London. So since there was disagreement between the Northern Protectorate and Southern Protectorate, there were no agreement as to when Nigeria should get independent or which direction to go. So he asked them to go back home and go and strategize, meet their people that is coming to Lagos to conclude on the meeting. So the conclusion of that London conference was in Lagos in 1954. And the outcome of the conference in 53 and Lagos 54 led to what? Leyton Constitution of 1954. And it was that constitution federalism was introduced. And now we say how? The three federalists were created: exclusive, concurrent, and residual. It was also at this conference an agreement which was reflected in 54 Constitution or Litigation that Nigerian Supreme Court was introduced. Though it was not the highest court of appeals at that time, it was subjected to private committee of the legal council in England, all right? But Supreme Court was introduced, all right? It also in the Constitution that agreed that there should be formal division of power between the central government and the component units there, which are what? North, East, and Western region. 63 Republican Constitution. No, the correct answer is what? 1954 Litigation Constitution. Because that constitution reflected the agreement, the recommendations of London 53 Conference and Lagos 54 Conference. Option D is the correct answer. I hope you're enjoying this class. Please subscribe to this channel to get more for this. The official termination of each session of a House of Assembly is known as adjournment, closure, dissolution, prorogation, summon. All these options, A to E, they are synonymous to terms used on the legislature. House of Assembly is a legislative house, legislature, okay? When you say adjournment, to adjourn means in the course of their discussion on a particular bill, okay, there was no conclusion, and then they can ask what? That they should adjourn. They can adjourn to resume back again after some time, okay? The closure means the end of a bill, the end of discussion on a particular bill, okay? Dissolution has to talk about the end of term of legislative assembly. If it's 3 years, if it's 4 years, if it's 5 years, how many years? So at that point, they will dissolve the House, dissolution, and there will be a general election to recompose a new set of legislative members. That dissolution, okay? Now, prorogation is the end of a session, not the end of the whole tenure. There's no between end of a tenure and end of a session. So the prorogation is end of a session. While dissolution is what? End of a tenure. I hope you get it right there. Good. While summon is to request members to attend meetings. All right? So the official termination of each session. Remember what I said? Dissolution is end of tenure of the legislative house. While prorogation is what? End of session. A session like the first year, the second session, the third session, then when it comes to if it's 4 years like in Nigeria, they dissolve the house, all right? So the correct answer to this question is prorogation. Prorogation, option D. The next question. On March 17, 1967, General Yakubu Gowon, in an attempt to forestall the eastern region of Nigeria from seceding and in response to various demands for states created 5 states, federal, well, he created 12 states, not to waste our time. 12 states were created. You know, before this time, we had 3 regions, okay? We have the northern region, eastern region, and western region. So there was Aburi Accord in Ghana, 1967, okay, between Gowon, Odumegwu Ojukwu, and of course, Gen Ankara of Ghana. Okay, it was that at that point that they agreed to change the Nigerian system from federal system to confederal system. Ojukwu, that's the only condition we allow Gowon, who was junior in military of rank, to continue as head of state of Nigeria. But Gowon getting back to Nigeria and looking at the implication of confederalism, which means any of the units, north, east, or west, can secede, can break away from the nation. So to forestall that, 12 states were created. These were the first time of state creation in Nigeria. Before then, we had regions, from protectorate to regions. Now 12 states were created, option C. All right? And don't forget that later on, when Murtala Obasanjo came to power in 1976-79, they created additional 7 states to make it 19. Okay? Power can be defined as what is power? That's the question is asking. Ability to command obedience, authority to influence others, legitimate right to rule, right to command respect, right to apply sanctions. Anywhere you see the word authority, legitimate, right, these are talking about authority. And that's what distinguishes authority from what? From power. Okay? So power is the ability to command obedience. Option A. The knowledge and belief which individuals possess about the political system is known as dash orientation. Now, when we talk about, this is what's called political culture. Political culture has to do with your orientation, your belief, okay, your feelings, your judgment about your political system. All right, that's political culture. And under this political culture, we have three components. We have affective, we have cognitive, and we have what? Evaluative. All right. When we say cognitive, cognitive means the belief you got from home, the knowledge you got about your society, among your peers, in school. These are all orientations, cognitive orientation. While affective means how do you feel, your feelings about what you had, your feelings about your belief, your feelings about your knowledge. That's affective. What evaluative has to do with what? The judgment, your personal judgment. What will you say from what you are feeling and from what you had? Personal judgment. So this one is talking about particularly your knowledge and belief. So the correct answer here is cognitive belief. Option B, cognitive belief. But if they're asking you your feelings about what you had, your knowledge about your society, the answer will be what? Affective. How it affected you. That's feelings. But if you're asked your personal opinion, your personal judgment, value judgment, the answer will be what? Evaluative. But for this question, the answer is what? Cognitive. Let's go to the next one. Decentralization has the following as merit, except that. In other words, all these are advantages of decentralization. Only one is not. And remember, when we say decentralization, we're talking about a situation whereby powers is shared. Powers is divided among component units, among leaders, among groups, or among agencies. All right, decentralization. Accommodate local differences, yes. Allows for leadership training, yes. Allows for conflicts of power. How? Enhances political participation, yes. Is a check on tyranny, yes. So the only one that is odd among all these options is allows for conflict of power. That is confusion. Option C is the answer for this question, okay? One of the main features of the February 1960 local government reform in Nigeria was this. I can't forget this too, was under Obasanjo, Mustala Obasanjo military regime that brought about this. And the aim and focus of this was to unify the system of what? Administration of the local government, right? Because before this time, the North, the West, the East operate different what? Local government system. But by this 76 local government reforms, there was uniformity in the system. So the correct option to this question is option E. Which type of democracy is Nigeria operating as a democratic state? I think I just explained this earlier when I was talking about direct democracy that started in Athens, in Greek city-state of Athens. Okay? Classical, representative, restricted, socialist, 21st century. The answer is what? Representative democracy, which means indirect democracy. Okay? Now, let's see the next one. The head of state or ceremonial president under the 1963 Republican Constitution was elected through open ballot, open secret ballot, option ballot, a head count, a secret ballot. Please take note that the head of state, that time in 1963, when we became a republic, was not generally elected. Rather, he was elected by the members of the National Assembly. Okay? The people elected National Assembly members. While National Assembly member now what? Elected the president. That's what they call indirect election. But the method they used that time was a secret ballot, such that no member could influence the option or decision of another member. Option E is the correct answer. And you should take note of this, that the major element of Nigerian elections at all levels has always been what? A secret ballot. Okay? The next question. What is referred to as the fourth estate of the realm? We have three organs of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Okay? So the one they refer to as the fourth realm of the estate in governance is the press. That's the mass media. The press, the mass media. After you have taken what? The three organs of government. This civil service is under the executive arm of government. So the correct option for this question is the press. Okay? The next question. What is not a feature of a unitary system? What is a unitary system from the word uni? Unitary system has to do with what? Concentration of political powers in one authority. either one hand or one authority or one level of government, like central government. That's what they call unitary system of government. Okay, so we believe, we assume that all these options are correct, only one is wrong. That's what the question is saying. So anyone that's pointing to decentralization, division of power, sharing of power, that is wrong. So let's see. The constitution should be flexible. That is a characteristic of what? Unitary system. The people forming the society are homogeneous. Yes. Similar ancestry, common culture, common tradition. Homogeneous. Yes. Okay. The question of succession does not arise. Does not notarise. Yes. Does not arise. Does not arise. Okay. This is does not arise. Yes. You cannot succeed because you just have only one arm of government that controls all the aspects. There is constitutional division of power. This is federalism. This is federalism, different from unitary system. Then there is only one source of authority. That was the definition I gave to you, concentration of power. So the only one odd out from all these options is what? Option D. Option D. Okay, that is answer. What is not a function of the civil service? Remember, I just mentioned now in the previous question. The civil service is an agency of the government, a department within the executive arm of government that help government advise the government on how to formulate policies and how to carry out those policies, all right? So which one is not their responsibility among all these options, which means 4 out of these 5 are their responsibilities. Let's see. The responsibility of advising the ministers, of course, the minister is a member of the cabinet, that's the executive. B, maintaining a comprehensive record of all decisions and keeping all correspondence. Yes, they carry out the record keeping of all government correspondence. C, preparing the annual budget. Yeah, each ministry is expected to what? Of the civil service is expected to submit what? Their proposal as budget to the ministers, and the minister will take it to the president. Yes. 7, as an intermediary between the public and the government. Yes. Why? They are the link between the people and the government. They understand government policies, they explain and interpret it to us, the people. E, writing manifestos for political parties. This is funny, you know, and that is the odd one out of these options. So the answer for this question is option E. E. Okay, we look at the next question. The imperial order in council, which came into force in January 1947, was generally referred to as the, the constitution that came before this time was in 1946. That was Otto Richard Constitution that regionalized Nigeria into North, East, and West. Otto Richard Constitution of 1946. All right, but it was gazetted. It was signed by the imperial order by the first day of January 1947 to become what? A legal document, a constitution for the colony of Nigeria under British then. So the answer is what? Option D. Constitutional Conference, well, we had many conferences. We had 1950, we had 1953, 54, 57, 58. It has nothing to do with this. Littleton was 1954, and we already had a question in that and answered that earlier. So Macpherson was 51, which means after Richard. Richard was for the 6th Constitution, and that is the correct answer there, all right? But we have double answer here. We have Richard Constitution, then we have Sir Arthur Richard Constitution, okay? So option E, swallow D, because this Richard could be any Richard. This D Richard could be any Richard. It could be Richard Dixon, Richard only. But the correct option here is now Sir Arthur Richard Constitution. Arthur Richard Constitution. So E, swallow D. The correct option is E. A multi-member constituency is used to facilitate the operation of multi-member. One multi means many member. You know, we have 2 types of constituency. By the way, what is constituency? Constituency is an electoral boundary created for the purpose of representation during election. So when it's time for election, areas are created for representing the people. So we have 2 types of constituency, single member and of course, multi-member. In Nigeria today, we are practicing multi-member, which means many members represent a particular constituency. Many members represent a particular constituency. So for you to have this, which operation are we? Absolute majority, functional representation, proportional representation, second balloting, simple majority. From the explanation, you can know that it's proportional representation, all right? Proportional representation, multi-member constituency. Which organ of government is responsible for the formulation and implementation of laws and policies? Assuming the question says, which organ of government formulate laws? The answer will be legislature. That's the parliament, lawmaker, formulate laws. Okay? But now it has extended it. Because it does say formulate and implement, not just laws, policies. So the answer here is executive. Why? Because sometimes the executive may form laws on behalf of legislature. In fact, most of the bills that are discussed in legislature are brought forward by the executive, who are the cabinets. Are you there? And they're also the one that make the policies and implement the policies. Okay? So the correct answer is option B, the executive, option B. Okay? Let's see the next question. The organization that is responsible for the control of the senior personnel of local government in terms of appointment, transfer, promotion, and termination is of course, once you have the local government, you are talking about the Local Government Service Commission. If they are saying state government, you're talking about State Government Service Commission. And if you talk about federal local government, you're talking about Federal Government Service Commission. So every level, we have 3 levels of government: federal, state, and local. Each level have their own service commission. So local government service commission. Okay? State has their own, and of course, federal also has its own. Very well. I hope you're enjoying this class. Please subscribe to this channel to get more from us. All right? The amalgamation of the colony of Lagos and the Southern Pretoria took place in, if you recollect, British colonialism in Nigeria. They came in 1861. You see a question like that later also. And then by 1862, Lagos was declared what? A colony. So Lagos was the first area captured or taken over by the British masters in Nigeria. It became a colony in 1862. Okay? And it remained so until they started to progress other parts of Nigeria to hinterland and the southern part. So the southern part was still taken over, and that's what we call Southern Protectorate. Meanwhile, towards nation building, that Lugard, when Lugard came to Nigeria, brought by British master, towards nation building, Lugard merged Colony of Lagos together with Southern Protectorate in 1906 as process towards nation building. And eventually by 1914, we have what they call the popular amalgamation. Amalgamation of the Colony of Lagos, Southern Protectorate, and of course, the Northern Protectorate to form what you now call today Nigeria. Okay? So the correct answer to this question is 1906, option C. The next question, the existence of delegated legislation. Why do we have delegated legislation? Why do we have delegated legislation? Delegated legislation is when any other organ or agency of government makes law on behalf of the legislature. It is the legislature that has the responsibility of making laws. Okay? But when any other organ makes such law, or any other agency makes such law on behalf of the legislature, that is what they call delegated legislation. But such laws has to be supervised or approved by the legislature eventually. Okay? So we'll call it delegated legislation. There are many reasons why there's delegated legislation. All right? I think we're going to come across a question like that if time permits us. Encouraging separation of power increases the work of parliament is another way of obtaining separation of power. Negate the principle of separation of power, reduces the power of the executive. When there's operation of delegated legislation, the implication is that you have reduced the effect of what? Proper separation of power. Because separation of power, as proposed by Montesquieu, is that each organ should mind their business, attend to your work, and leave the other organ alone. But this one is saying that the other organ cannot interfere in your own organ, all right, in your own work. That is, it negates the principle of separation of power. Option D. Let's see the next question. What did not give birth to the development of nationalism in Nigeria? In other words, all these options led to what? Nationalism. What's nationalism in Nigeria? It means the struggle for freedom, the struggle for independence, the struggle for liberty, putting an end to colonialism. All right? Discrimination in employment exercise against Nigeria was one of the factors that motivated Nigeria to keep what? Pressing for freedom. Key decisions were made by the Nigerians for the Europeans to carry out. This is speaking in irony, in opposite, right? Because the opposite was actually the point. The Europeans made laws for Nigeria to carry out, all right? Particularly the traditional rulers. See, Nigerian culture was tampered with. Yes, of course, Nigerian culture was tampered with by the colonial masters, right? The Nigerians were denied some facility. Yes, there are some places were not given access to Nigeria, but only restricted for what? For the white club and what have you. The Nigerian economy was controlled by foreigners. Yes, this exploitation, economic exploitation. So the one that is odd among these options is option B. It's a key decision were made by Nigerians for the. If Nigeria were making decisions, there won't be need for what? For struggle for freedom, for liberty, for control. So option B is the correct option for this particular question. Let's see the next question. Sovereignty is known for the following apparent characteristics, except, in other words, clear features of sovereignty. What is sovereignty? Sovereignty is a principle of government that states that a state is powerful, is absolute, and can defend and protect and rule itself without fear of external interference. Absolute power of a state. That's the meaning of sovereignty. Okay? Very well. So which of these is odd from that definition? Absoluteness. Yes. Divisible. It should be indivisible. Indivisibility. The inalienability. In other words, the sovereignty of a state cannot be aligned, given to somebody else. Can be taken over, given to somebody else. Okay? Permanent. Yes, a sovereign state is permanent, does not change. Universality. A sovereign state has universality of its power across all its territory. So the one that is odd among these is divisibility. Actually, it's supposed to be what? Indivisible. A sovereign state has element of what? Indivisibility. Okay? Option B is correct for this. Let's see the next question. Public opinion is the sum total of views and feelings of citizens on matters relating to. When I say public opinion, I'm talking about what people think about decisions and actions of the government. You know, what people think, and it's been expressed, thoughts and expression. That's what we call public opinion. Okay? So the continent, the nation, parochial interest, sectionalism, self-interest. Of course, matters relating to what? To the nation. To the nation. Option B is the correct answer. What is not a fundamental human right? This is another question. Okay? In other words, all these are assumed to be what? Fundamental human right, FHR, except one. Freedom from arbitrary arrest, yes, habeas corpus right. Then freedom of movement, yes. Presumed guilty until found innocent. Is it right? Right to fair trial, yes. And right to life, which is the basic right of a citizen of a state. Okay? This presumed guilty is not a right. It's not part of fundamental human right. Right? There's no between human right and fundamental human right. So this is not for. This is a statement made by one of the, I think, Lord Acton from British Parliament, right? That somebody is presumed guilty until he's found what? Innocent. In other words, you don't declare somebody, you don't presume, you don't assume that somebody is guilty until when the person has been tried by what? By a court. So somebody is innocent until when it is what? Tried and found guilty. So this is wrong statement. Option C is the correct answer for the question. One remarkable achievement of Lord Lugard's regime as governor was the, remember when Nigeria was created in 1914, after amalgamation in 1914, Lord Lugard became the first official colonial governor general of Nigeria. And the first thing he did was to establish what we call Nigerian Council. Nigerian Council was established. Nigerian Council was like a legislative body that makes law for Nigeria that time. Okay, but these laws were being made for what? For only the southern protectorate. So the correct answer here is establish the Nigerian Council. At this point, because of our time, we're going to stop here. But if you have any questions on this, please send the question. We're going to attend to them. I also want to advise that you subscribe to this channel so that you can get more from us. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm sure you enjoyed the content you just watched. To see more episodes as that, preparing you for your oncoming exams, smash the subscribe button on this channel right now and visit the playlist that we've made for you, covering over 50 type of different exams, including JAMB, WAEC, Cacao,